Hi there. In this lecture we see Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces against Ostmoe in 2005 Norwegian Championship round 5. So it's interesting because it starts off quietly with Magnus just controlling the centre basically. All of these moves look positional, not like a king like hack attack opening you'd think. So c takes b5, bishop takes, bishop g2. So in fact, hyper modern, very hyper modern, both bishops are being fianchettoed actually. So we've got good central control here, but is there any attacking prospects? Well, funny enough, by playing e4 we do actually get to have quite an attacking, audaciously attacking piece emerge after e4, because knight takes e4, knight takes, d takes, rook takes e4, bishop b7. Guess what Magnus plays here, which all of a sudden is like putting on a different stylistic hat. So this is, you could say, hypermodern central control to start off with, but now it's like hack attack mode. Rook h4. This rook actually reminds me, maybe I'm a bit funny, it reminds me of R2D2 in Star Wars, like on top of the spaceship. It looks like this is an R2D2 like firing out lasers on h7, this rook, but that's just me. Okay, so I think it's a very unusual rook anyway. So let's see, knight f6, we have queen e2, bishop d5. So it still looks as though, isn't black really quite solid here? There's an isolated queen's pawn. The bishop's kind of locked in at the moment. Where is the attack? So we have rook e1, queen b8, knight e5. So not minding an exchange of bishops here. We have queen b7. In fact, bishop takes d5. Queen takes d5, and now another attacking move to contribute to the rook on h3. So 5 points. What would you play here? So in fact there's almost the weakness of the last move. The queen's actually neglected c7 on that move, so we have queen c2, which seems to cause a problem about c7, but it is, the queen is also glancing at h7, which sets up another move. So this is an interesting move, queen c2. It's like an attacking move basically. We have c5, which is actually a mistake. h6 would have been safer, and that pawn can be sacrificed. There's compensation if that pawn is taken. So let's say bishop c1. If we're not interested in c7, let's say we're interested in an attack, we could play like this, and knight c6, knight d5, rook g4. We're still interested in attacking chess, and we've got bishop takes h6 here. But if we've got an edge, it's only a small edge here. So the thing is, if we tried knight g4 here, black can just take. You'll note that black's not getting mated there. So yeah, we really, after c5, it's protecting that pawn, but yeah, on h6 we really wouldn't be interested in taking this pawn on c7, even though that seems to be what black was concerned about. There's a key move here which would give black a lot of counterplay. It's bishop b4, and this rook starts to feel misplaced. The R2D2 rook starts to feel misplaced here. So I'll give you an example or two. If rook c1, bishop d2, say rook c5, queen e4, say bishop a3, queen e2, and now vacating e4 for knight e4, and it starts to look really awkward because there's things like knight g5 after this position. Say knight e4 looking at f2, yeah, it looks as though black's got a strong attack, and for example this position, white could be in big trouble. This could be, black could get a lot of counterplay stemming from this bishop b4 move. If rook d1 is another sample, rook c8, and then rook on the 7th is dangerous in its own right, dangerous compensation. Looking at f2 here, it starts to become pretty horrible. Knight g6, knight g5, looking at that rook and looking at the light squares. This position, black would win the exchange. Yeah, so there's lots of counterplay which is generated basically on bishop b4. So that's actually not the concern that black should have been concerned with, because it's not that exploitable, winning that pawn after bishop b4. This is actually quite awkward. The queen sits well cutting across escape squares here, and this rook could be a target. So it's interesting. So anyway, c5 though is not addressing the h7 concern, and now there's just a great attacking move, simple and direct here. So what do you think that is for 10 points? Yeah, it's knight g4, just trying to deflect that defender away from h7. So, okay, h6 is played, so if knight takes, yeah, we're playing queen takes h7 mate. If g6, we're playing knight h6 check, and here d takes pins that knight on f6, and here knight g4, if we look at this position, queen d2, I mean there's some really good ideas here in this position if black is slow. So for example, if rook ac8, bishop takes, rook takes is one good idea to fork the queen. There's some really tempting ideas. So let's assume the queen moves to d2, queen b1 here, and we've got a strong attack. Bishop takes here, knight takes, rook h4. We have actually a strong advantage in this position, as well as being a pawn up. So yeah, if we look at, again, instead of h5, what about a5? Then queen a1. This is super hyper modern, great pressure on f6, and this is breaking through. Well, okay, maybe delayed, but white has a big advantage in this position in any case. So h6 though is tried in the game. We now have rook e5, so with tempo, the queen goes to f3, and now things get violent all of a sudden. So before it was like calm centralizing game, and now there's violence against the king. King attacking, king hack attack is emerging here. Guess what Magnus plays here to try and open up the king. So it's amazing, like two hats in one game. The first like hat stage of the game was just centralizing the pieces and playing in the like double fianchetto, and now we're in like Tau hack attack mode. Knight takes h6, strips away the king a bit. We're now threatening rook g5 checkmate here. Now that we've taken away escape squares with that rook. Okay, so king g7 tries to deal with that with the idea of taking this rook on h6. So here, if there is a slight inaccuracy, it maybe here there was a really accurate move. Magnus plays a very dangerous move though. What do you think the really most accurate move is in this position for 10 points? Okay, the most accurate is actually just to move this rook to renew the rook g5 mate threat. So on rook g8, rook f4 though, we can play rook f4 here, and then d5, and look at this pressure. Say rook g5 check, rook takes, knight takes. That is a weakness with the last move. We can pounce into h7, threatening queen takes f7 mate. And here things are starting to crumble. Bishop g7 check, bishop e5 check, and winning the queen. So things start to crumble after rook h4. Let's look at that again. Let's say queen b7 instead of queen c6, d5, e takes. Again, you know, we just get a very strong attack. Here bishop takes, winning material. So that's why the queen going to c6 is actually, it's got that point of holding the f6 right after this d5 happens. So yeah, it's an interesting situation. And let's say queen takes f4. This looks a bit unsound, doesn't it? Knight g4. It's not really helping matters. We have rook g5 check. There's no real counterplay there for black. So anyway, in the game, rook g5 check though is played offering the h6 rook. So this is a lot of fun. And now what's the key point here? Yeah. So bishop c1 has a very dangerous threat to it. Because we're controlling the h7 escape square, we're actually threatening rook g4 check to give the king h5, and then rook h4 will be checkmate. So we have c takes d4. So if rook g8, just to show rook g4 check, say black tries to put something in front, fine, we're just taking that rook, it's absolutely winning, rook g4, and we're just wiping away lots of material, we're winning lots of material. But yeah, if e5, rook g4 check, well, it's hopeless. So if knight e4, rook f5 check, and then taking the queen. If queen e4, rook g4 check, and then taking the queen. If bishop d6, rook g4 check. Yeah, I mean, all the time, if the king goes to h5, there's rook h4, checkmate. So bishop f4, this is absolutely winning. So yeah, it's a very dangerous threat. So c takes d4. We have rook g4 check here. If rook f5 check, we could play, black could play queen e3, and in fact here, on rook takes f6, bishop takes f takes, our edge has been limited actually here. Yeah, we have already invested quite a bit of material, so this isn't such a big deal for white. So rook f5 isn't so accurate. So rook g4 check is actually better than rook f5 check. And queen e3, because again, if king h5, we have rook h4 checkmate. So queen e3. Now, yeah, we've invested material already. So actually Magnus goes for the check here, not too keen to take the queen. And in fact, the most accurate move now is played. What do you think that is for 10 points? It's actually rook takes h5 to deflect the king away from h7. It's the most accurate. If we'd taken on e3, we've already invested some material. Bishop takes h4. We do have advantage here, though. We still have advantage even here, but it's not so clear. But rook takes h5 is more accurate. Now this check. And now f takes e3. So we've got the king in a kind of net. We've taken away some key escape squares. And if we have a move like king g2, we take away 2 king escape squares immediately to try and checkmate the opponent's king just with king g2. So in fact here, what do you think Magnus plays? Does he move the bishop? No, he just takes away escape squares, king g2. The queen is looking after the c2 square here. There's no, benefit of rook c2. We have rook takes c1. If bishop f6, what we can do here is actually move the bishop. We can have the luxury of moving the bishop first. And then, we're taking the rook if rook c2. If d takes e3, then h3 check. And then the bishop, which has lived now, just checkmates, in fact. So, in this position, rook takes c1 is played. h3 check, king g5. And now queen g7 check is very accurate. The king is very precariously placed. And in fact, can you see a little mate in 2 from here? White's playing mate in 2. It's a forced mate in 2. White's play 10 points. It's actually g4 check. After king e4, queen takes d4 is checkmate. So yes, this is a remarkable game. I would say it's like a twin hat game. It starts off like a dry, positional opening, double fianchetto, hypermodern style hat. And then all of a sudden, there's a reason for the rook, not to come back to e1, keeping it kind of a positional tone to the game. In fact, it's like the hat was switched to an attacking, like Mikhail Tal hat was put on here with the R2D2 rook. Anyway, yeah. So, and this, when we look at Tal's games, if he plays moves like Queen C2, Tal is looking at the soft spot, H7. You get acutely aware of these queen moves, like if you look at Tal games for soft spots. But here, the big concern was C7, it seems, for black playing C5, rather than the more important concern for H6, to make sure this knight G4 doesn't have any punch to it. So yeah, C5 was a key mistake, and yeah, the rest is pretty amazing attacking chess from here. What a transformation from a positional opening to a hack attack there. Okay, great stuff. So central control first, you could say, in summary, and then attacking after. But the center was used as a pivot to pivot that rook, to that remarkably unusual position, h3. Okay, great stuff. Thanks very much. Hi all, I hope you enjoyed this free Magnus Carlsen lecture. I will be doing quite a few, in fact, because I'm working on a course about universal chess style with a lot of Magnus Carlsen game examples. So I hope you can actually support my channel indirectly by checking out my courses page at Kingscrusher TV. It has great discount codes quite often. So I have a number of courses I've been working on in the last few years. As you can see, I've been busy. Some of these have become Udemy bestsellers in the past or currently, like the Complete Beginner's Guide to Chess is a current bestseller. The Complete Guide to Chess Tactics was previously a Udemy bestseller. So I hope you can check out the courses, and there are free lecture offerings you can check out as well within these. If you really want to get an idea more about the course, you can also expand the course structure when you go and check out a course. So I hope you check out the Kingscrusher TV page, which has these great discount codes attached to all these links. So it's better than going to Udemy directly if you want chess courses, okay, at really affordable prices. So thanks again. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.